Testing, 1, 2. Can I get y'all's attention? I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I am Dr. Eddie Moore, or what's left of him. And I just want to welcome everybody here to the fire station tonight. It's a great place. I want to thank the mayor and the town council for supporting this meeting tonight. It is a special meeting. And we have a new elected mayor. We have pretty much a new city council. They're all wonderful people. They've got a big task ahead of them because we are one of the fastest growing communities in the state. We're probably one of the fastest growing exits between Dallas and Atlanta, possibly. And we're very excited about it. And again, I just want to welcome you, and I want to ask Brother Gavin to offer a word of prayer.
I thought we could do something spiritual and maybe pass a plate if y'all want to start with that. No? Okay. Well, let's pray. Father, we thank you, God, just for gathering together folks who in this community want the best for this community. And God, we just pray, Father, that you fill this place with your presence. God, we pray that everything that is talked about tonight is shared. God, we pray that truth would be revealed. God, we pray that you'd give us all wisdom. And God, we pray that we'd honor you in everything that we say and how we act, and what we speak, and what we don't say. God, we pray that you'd be glorified in everything. We love you. And in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Brother Gavin. I think we have some important things to talk about here tonight. People have asked if we have a list of speakers. We really don't. I think it's a chance for Haughton to citizens to speak out a little bit, voice their concerns. Maybe we'll get a few answers. I do want everybody to be very respectful. This is, I'm hoping we have some pertinent information. But do be respectful of everyone else. We don't want, this is just a dialogue here tonight. And it's just a beginning for us. It does concern the burn chamber at Camp Minden. And I have some slides to show a little bit. I have, hang on just a second here. The question really in my mind, is what this could develop into, what will be the future for us. I think it's not all negative, there's a lot of positive with it as well. But I would like to read, this is from a resolution. I think most everybody probably remembers the history of what all this went on out there. And I realize that Camp Minden was there before I was born, and it'll be there wherever I'm gone. And there will always be stuff out there that can burn up and blow up. That's just the way it is. And like I say, I moved in here beside it in 1983, and I'm proud to raise my family here. I'm not a Haughtonite, but I consider my children to be. But anyway, this is a resolution. It's a House Concurrent Resolution number 172. It says to direct the Louisiana National Guard not to accept waste explosives at Camp Minden after August 1, 2015. There's 37 representatives' names on this. Mr. Reynolds' name is first. Henry Burns' name. Mike Johnson and some others that I recognize. And it goes on, it describes kind of the reason for this. And it goes on to say, whereas the state of Louisiana should take steps to protect its citizens by preventing the dangerous situation like Camp Minden from ever occurring again. Therefore, be it resolved that the Louisiana legislature hereby direct the Louisiana National Guard not accept waste explosive at Camp Minden brought into the state after August 1st, 2015. And at that time, several the towns and so on passed resolutions to this same effect. They're just resolutions. And but anyway, y'all all know the dialogue of what happened in the burn chamber was brought forward. It was a big blessing. We was all excited to see it come. The contract was that it was supposed to be dismantled and moved after it was over with. I think that's what we were all anticipating. As far as I know, there is some companies out there. The Black Powder Company, I think somebody said there's 4 companies out there, very clean companies, and I think they're very welcome out there. I kind of my country boy way of thinking. Those that don't know me, I moved there in '83. I come from a long line of uneducated farmers, ranchers, livestock, and horse traders, and I'm proud of that. We're pretty good at all those things, but we're in a deal here now that, in my country boy way of thinking, I kind of liken what happened to when you rent something to somebody and they go belly up. What happens? They get out of Dodge and they leave the trash. But in this case, they end up leaving all this propellant that was deteriorating and it was supposed to be unsafe to ship out of here. And I question the materials that would be coming in, how safe they would be. Shreveport City Council did pass a resolution the other day objecting to the acceptance of waste materials here into Camp Minden, because a lot of the materials would need to go through the switch yards there at the railroad tracks in Shreveport. And anything that is negative to this community here is also negative to Shreveport. But the governor and General Curtis is who has a say in this. All we have is a voice. And I guess I would like to say that whenever Haughton, he asked what does Haughton, Louisiana think, I think we should say there's a lot of concerned citizens here who feel like we don't have all the answers. And I probably feel like there is some answers there. I would like to start off with a little resolution that I gave to the town council. And in this, I don't know if you can read it all in the back, so I'll read it to you. A resolution objecting to the acceptance of outside military and industrial waste for disposal at Camp Minden. I go on to say, whereas the location of the present burn chamber is within 1.7 miles of Haughton Middle School and large subdivisions in our town. I do probably stand corrected on the 1.7. I think a better term would be say less than 2 miles, because what Google Map uses might be a little different. I go on to say, whereas there should be an impact study presented to the Town of Haughton, Board of Aldermen, and Haughton Public Schools as to the safety requirements of our students in an event of a catastrophic incident. And whereas an impact study should include a study as to the impact on the property values of our citizens to the development of our town due to the big concerns regarding environmental disclosures and all property transfers of our citizens. And I went on to say, it didn't happen tonight, but it's an open invitation to the governor to come see Haughton. And see that we're, in fact, one of the fastest growing communities in the state. We have a lot of issues. One of them is traffic. And the DOT was here. Mr. James Madden might help me with this a little bit, but they kind of led me to believe there might be a little federal money in the play to get some more work done on our interchange up here, maybe another bridge over the highway. But I would just like for them to come and see where, just good, honest, hardworking people and just kind of issues we face. There's a thought process I've been going through, and there's been a lot of talk the last few years about an educational technology research chain that extends from LSUS through Barksdale through Bipsy, through this area. And folks, do not underestimate the technical college in Minden. There's some youngsters coming out in instrumentation and other degrees that are wonderful. It extends on over to Louisiana Tech. And it's happening in Bossier. And it's just busted wide open. They just article in a paper about the Integrated Technology Center just celebrating their 500th employee. So it's happening. But I'm having a hard time. I know this cutting edge technology, the burn chamber, but I'm kind of having a hard time in my mind kind of relating that being right in the middle of the chain. I'm comparing this a little bit to, I told Dean here with ESI a while ago, I encourage him to look at an area. It's called the Golden Triangle of Mississippi. And I'm not going to stretch all this out. But that area started about 10 years ago. He's a bulldog for business. His name is Joe Max Higgins. And long story short, he brought $6 billion and 6,000 jobs into that area. And it's a coordinated effort between 3 towns, West Point, Starkville, and Columbus, in 3 counties. And involves a think tank. And I would like to see some of that happen here. People like James Madden, Lynn Bailey's, the others, teachers in our colleges and so on, get something together and everybody work together. And this may be a big old rose in this bed of thorns, so to speak. We've got to think and work through this and kind of get the facts. And anybody that speaks tonight, please just give the facts as you know, not something you assume, anything like that. But anyway, that's kind of some of the thoughts I've been having about all of this. And one challenge I offered to one professor the other day, I said, all these monitors, why can't we have something in the schools that maybe a science class or whatever could monitor some of these, supposed to be toxins that's floating around from different things. Kind of get something going there just research-wise. Another one I told Dean a while ago, is it possible to make small chambers rather than a big chamber instead of us accepting the problem, ship it to somebody else, and make those things right here in Webster Parish. But we're kind of going into an area, the state's short on money. There's a movement in Washington, D.C. to shrink government. So I don't know what the surveillance is going to be out there at Camp Minden. I would say with James Madden and his family involved, it's probably going to be better than it's been in a long time. I think we can all take some comfort in that. But anyway, I want to go on a little bit further here and show you some maps. This is actually the resolution from Shreveport, and if anybody wants to look at it, we'll look at it afterwards. Anyway, Rex, let's go on to the next slide.
That one.
That would be good. I can't move this microphone, but Lynn, lady, can I get you to come help me? You know this map as good as anybody here. Yeah. Well, I'll give Lynn help me a little bit. This is a land map. We'll get Lynn to point out section 14, this is township 18 and 11. And I've got a piece of rod and a section 14 in the northeast corner is where the burn chamber is located. And most people in Haughton do not know that the burn chamber was actually in Bossier Parish. A lot of people didn't even realize it was part of Camp Minden in Bossier Parish. All the dialogue is always Camp Minden and Dorleen and South Webster. But we are involved. And anyway, in section 14 is where the burn chamber is. If we don't point out section 15, yeah, 14 is the chamber. Section 15 is where the new school is. Right there marked in green. And Tuscany subdivision is in between there. And Cornerstone subdivision's there. There's a small double wide. I think I counted 42 homes there on 164. They're all in between there. So they're all the first ones to be affected. And anyway, that's pretty close. And I question. I was trying to study, how this relates to our property values here in Haughton. And it's kind of interesting to read about it. It's called the hedonic price theory. And what it is a theory used to determine non-market quality variables in the price of real estate. And a lot of it is environmental, but a lot of it is perception. And the perception part of it is what you live next to, who your neighbors are, a good neighbor, a bad neighbor. If you got a real good school, do you have a solid waste dump next to you? And of course, everybody who's right next to it is affected the most. But the most effect is going to be in the first 2 miles. And farther out you go, the less it's going to be. Kind of an average figure to use would be about 70% increase in the value. And with the farm background, feed yards, and so on we operate in, 2 things that jumped out at me is wind farms and ethanol plants, which is a big old whiskey still. But it tends to drop at about 15%. But anyway, I don't know how this plays out with us, but I think it does have an effect. And when you take a house like in Cornerstone, $300,000 house, if it did in fact drop the value 15%, that's $45,000. In Tuscany, $200,000 house is $30,000. I don't see any way that this can expand the price. And I think the perception of young couples and so on with young children, even though it's clean, I'm not objecting to the burn chamber as much as I'm objecting to the location of it. And, you know, the material's being brought in here, and I think it could have, when you look at this map and you go on across there to the area where all the action is right now, when companies look at this and they do an environmental study of it, you know, is that going to have effect to somebody like Walmart or Kroger? I think at some point they will take a look at it. You know, it's a personal goal for me as Willis Knight or somebody like that to put a hospital here sometime. Well, they want to put it right next to it. And again, we're talking about perception. But one thing that kind of changes this whole deal for me is perception kind of got blown out the window when the windows were blown out of the school in Dorleen because it became a reality. And so I think the 15% is realistic. I think it could happen to us. And I hate negative publicity. People ask me, we need the news media out here. I say, no, we don't need the news media out here. We just need to talk about this. You know, see if we can't everybody come to the table and kind of work our way through this. But Camp Minden is 15,000 acres. If you're a neighbor of Camp Minden, whether you be over by James Madden's over on the east side, or if you're on the west side, or I have property on Goodwill Road on the north side, Dorleen. But there's basically at 15,000 acres, that is 24 sections. So if you're considering a 2-mile radius against the whole area of Camp Minden, I come up with, y'all can do your own math, I come up with 72 sections. That's over 45,000 acres. And so I'm guesstimating there's over $500 million worth of property located in that circumference. And so how the world come up with that? Well, I'm going to encourage you to go try to buy a small tract for less than $10,000 an acre. But that 2-mile circumference takes in a good bit of Haughton, takes in just about all of Dorleen, takes in Dixie Inn, and all the businesses out. I think that's a conservative estimate. So if it did truly a real bad negative image in the long run of accepting all this waste back in here, if we did at $500 million, that's $75 million. That's a pretty significant impact. And I don't know if it can happen. I just don't see the upside of all of this really expanding our market. And we are excited about Haughton growing. But these young first-time home buyers and so on, I am concerned about them. But one of the biggest drawing points we have right now is this big new school and a school system. We have a very, very fine school system. And folks, I invite you to take a good long look at the new Haughton Mid School. That thing would not be out of place at LSU campus. It's magnificent. But I just question, you know, what the negative impact will it be? Because it is, if somebody comes in looking at a home and they ask that question, or a big company, you know, what is the environmental concerns in this area? Well, you've got to admit, you know, we've got a burn chamber, maybe one of the best in the world. But it is operating in Section 14 and the school's in Section 15. Say, well, I live over on the other side of the school district. It's not a concern of mine. But your children and grandchildren may be sitting in those classrooms. And I encourage anybody who wants to say a few words tonight. If you have some concerns, again, I just want everything to be as positive as possible. And I'd like to say a little bit more later. That's the main things I want to talk about. And, you know, it's concerned for me the property values and the perception of the whole deal. And anyway, I know Lynn said something about he wouldn't mind to say a few words because he's like me. He's got a lot more property than I have. It's within that 2-mile radius there. And I know it's a concern for him and his family, and I'll let him start it off next if he'd like.
Well, I'm not really prepared for a whole lot. I have a lot of questions that I would really like to ask to the people. Positive, and they say we have positive, and maybe we need to learn some of this positive. We're hearing a lot of negative about people not wanting it, and from what information we get, you know, I'm not for it myself, but you know, I need to see some of the. All I'm hearing is it's going to create jobs. Well, that's good, but saying that, doing business, man, I have to pay property taxes. I'd like to know if this is expensive process for the machinery, the burn chamber, we're talking about bunches of $1 million. Now, if Bobby Edmondson gonna get money, or is the state gonna get tax money for this, and we pay property taxes, is just taxable. Or they come in with no taxes, we have to pay it on our machinery. The other people in here too, they have to pay their taxes. Now, the Bossier Parish, the facility should be taxed at the same rate as any other town, or any other process. Those are the questions I'd like to find out. Why not? I know it's on the military base and all that, and it's individual companies running the town. I feel like they ought to pay their fair share of taxes. So there's a lot of questions that have not been answered, and we haven't heard them. Maybe we need to find something. I'd like to hear some of the positive aspects of this. How can it just going to help our community, and how it's going to hurt? So all we've heard is what it's going to do to hurt our community. So I'll leave it at that and speak up.
Okay, Mr. James Van will talk a little bit later. Does anybody else would have some concerns? I'm sure welcome you to come up and voice them right now. And I did receive a call from Ryan Gaddy earlier, and he had stuff going on with these ball games and so on. He is very concerned about all of this, and he wants to know what people think here. And he thinks it is important for us to have a conversation here in Haughton, a continued conversation, about what we feel like we need and don't need. And that was a very positive conversation I had with him. They are intended on offering a poll of a 30-mile radius and will be professionally done. And I think that is going to have a good bit of a deciding factor on all of this. And that is one thing that he's working on right now. He did recommend that we consider some sort of impact study as far as the economics of this to our community. And I'm not sure exactly how to go about that. I was kind of hoping maybe the state might offer something, but I don't know if they got money in the coffers to do that. But anyway, I'd sure welcome anybody else. The superintendent of Bossier Parish Schools is here. I'm sure I'm glad he's here.
Thank you, and I appreciate having the opportunity to address this crowd. A couple of weeks ago, we started out at the town hall, and I believe it was not on the agenda, so we moved down here to the fire station and discussed the situation in another room. Obviously, as the superintendent for the Bossier Parish School System, I have to keep your children's safety uppermost in mind. It's extremely important that we do that. We have some fine schools. This is one of the fastest growing areas in Bossier Parish and one of the fastest growing areas in the entire state of Louisiana. A testament to that is the latest and greatest school that we have in our school system getting ready to open this fall, and that's Haughton Middle School. Now, I have questions, obviously, and it's something that I have to bring back to the board, and it's something for the board to consider. I do realize that we as local entities do not have the final say. Obviously, that lies with the governor. But it is a voice that can be heard. My questions are if there is a possibility of contaminated gases being emitted from this burn chamber, which is in close proximity, of course, to our schools. If there is a possibility that there will be a catastrophe, then what is the school system going to have to provide? Are we going to have to provide some type of immediate evacuation procedures for our students? Depending upon the situation, we may have to locate many buses up here. And of course, we would not be busing them back to their houses because all the homes are in this area. We're going to have to be moving them far away, farther west, I would assume. So those are some questions that I have. And these are important questions because if we have to locate buses, if we have to have evacuation procedures in place, we have to move our children out in a very quick and expeditious fashion. This will cost money. In the end, it costs taxpayer money, to be honest with you. And so those are questions that I have. And if there is the smallest chance that something tragic could occur, then we will have to implement procedures. I do want you to know that. So those are the questions I have as a school system. I have not been contacted by anyone except for the good folks here from the town of Haughton. Mr. George Chambers, I've talked with him, a good friend from a long ways back, and people that have very reasonable concerns. And so obviously, since you have those concerns, I have those concerns for the school system because we have several thousand students that are in these schools during school day. And it's going to be a huge burden, a huge responsibility for me to make sure that I have the right procedures in place to evacuate your children to a safe location. So those are obviously the concerns that I have. And if someone can answer those, if there's anyone in here that is an expert, or if there's experts, then I'll be glad to take that post.
I have a question for you, sir.
Yes, sir.
What kind of procedures, emergency procedures do you have in place, or did you have in place for the children of the schools when all the explosives were being stored out there prior to ESI getting rid of them?
Well,
So what kind of procedures did you have in place?
well, that's something where you have to get your bus drivers in place, and then you have to start shipping them to a safe location. But obviously this, if we're talking about a permanent facility and that type of thing, we would have to put in place something very formal, something that has to take a considerable amount of training, for the bus drivers, to contact those who have commercial driver's license. It's not just a simple act. I mean, it's something that will take a considerable amount of time and effort on our part.
So how long was all that stuff stored out there before?
Sir, I don't have any idea. I mean, we haven't been contacted. We didn't know anything from the Bossier Parish School System about this.
I guess that's the point. There were no procedures for all the stuff that was out there blowing up on its own. So I just wanted to ask what kind of procedures you had for the safety of our children then.
Well, you have procedures whenever there's something that occurs. We obviously have procedures for getting kids off campus if we need to. If we need to, all across the parish. But this may be something that is of particular importance because if it's going to be located here permanently, then we're going to have to make sure that we have the proper training in place and we have the proper equipment to be able to do that job. Thank you.
May I add, in all due respect, it's a nice question, but the state didn't even know about the M6 being stored out there, more or less the school board and the citizens, until it was transferred to the Sir, we weren't, the state wouldn't allow to do backdoor inspections, they didn't never let that stack up out there. I'm not going to argue the point, I'm just telling you what General Curtis and the findings were of the state police, and no one knew that it was there. But now that's changed, the state can go in and do backdoor inspections, so to prevent that from happening again. But I just didn't, the question to him, I knew there was no way the citizens knew, no way we knew, the legislators didn't know, the state didn't know, the governor didn't know. It was the people like General Curtis didn't know that was all stored out there. So thankfully we do, but everybody knows about this. So they're able to address it, and I'm glad that Madden and the ESI guys are here so you can tell people what it's about.
For everybody that doesn't know me, my name is Dean Schellhase. I'm the BSI. Jason Poe's sitting here in the front lane. I guess I want to answer this question first because it is important. The safety of the children is paramount. But I guess there was a question, and I think it's a valid question because we are burning. We've been burning for a year. April 13th will be 1 year. Do you have a plan right now if something were to happen? Is my question. Because you should. And
did anybody tell the Bossier Parish School System?
Absolutely, through Homeland Security. Well, and I guess, I think there's a gap here that needs to be filled, and we want to work to fill that, but, Homeland Security's been intimately involved with this. from the planning of, where we were siting everything and locating everything. And it's paramount that, it wasn't a mystery where we were going to be doing this removal action. So I hope that it's not a surprise to y'all that we're there. So Homeland Security did notify y'all, or? Oh, he wasn't?
It's not a surprise now. I'm a first year superintendent.
Okay. Well,
Information is now coming to me. Been told about it actually from Town Street. That's how I found out.
well, one of the things that is important is the amount of explosives and what we have out there. Everything has a quantitative distance radius. And our safety manager's right here is 42 years in the military doing safety. And as far as a detonation or a catastrophic event, there's about 4 different things that are in place to prevent that. The system as it's designed, the way that we operate it, we have engineering controls and we have operational controls. Outside of that, we planned for something that was way far worse than ever could be created with the chamber. So we have over 200% increase in our safety as far as the distance that we are separated by. And so there's a lot of things that I would encourage you to come see. And we're having, Ms. Pam Bloxham's here, but the more people that see it have a better understanding of it. So there's a lot of stuff to prevent any offsite impact. And there's federal regulations, there's military regulations that we follow that talk about separation distances, how far we are from an inhabited building. You're talking about a school, that's an inhabited building. We are way, 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 way far away from an inhabited building based on what we are doing with that facility. And so we have a lot of safety things in place, but I would encourage you to know and come see what we're doing. I hope that answers your question. I'm not trying to be controversial, but I want y'all to have a plan in case something were to happen. Now, understanding what could happen is what our safety people do day in and day out, and off-site impact isn't even in the equation. We handle 880 pounds of a propellant. That's it. So there really isn't a lot of risk, but I guess we're going to talk about taxes later. Mr. James, you're going to come up.
As I understand it, and I can be ignorant on this subject, so my understanding is that you want to burn not only propellant, but you want to burn just anything that you want to get your hands on to burn it. And that's concerned me, anything from a paint can to a nuclear deal is considered hazardous waste. So how are we supposed to feel comfortable about the things that you're going to burn if you are to burn them?
Sure, and he's got a valid question, and I know there's been a lot of stuff out there. And his question is, how do we know what you're going to be putting through this chamber, through this process? And it's regulated by a permit, and in that permit that's done with the state of Louisiana, it tells you have to list everything that you could ever want to put in there. And then you have to demonstrate that you can perform and meet all the emission quality and everything with all those materials that you list. You can't put anything that you feel like into this system. It's not as though we can take in medical waste. People were talking about that. It'll never happen. We don't put anything in there that has chlorine in it like PVC.
You're willing to put that in writing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
the thing that bothers me is that, and I know it's the open air versus the closed system, but their duty at Compact recently was to burn for 5 minutes and that's it. Well, they were burning for 50 minutes. There's a lot of human error and greed that goes on in those things. How do we feel, have that warm fuzzy feeling about this thing, and it's stacked up
yes.
millions of pounds of this thing, and somebody was supposed
Yes, and all your points are very valid. Is what y'all went through with X-Club is horrendous. You know, they're in court, they're dealing with that. Doesn't excuse the actions and the fallout that has come from that. You asked me several questions, but one thing I want to point out before I get to the next question is the permit that would be filed would be there's a public comment period. And what it is we would file for a permit to keep this system operational to do X, Y, and Z. In that public comment period, the permit's there. It shows you what we're going to do, the process that we have with the contained burn chamber, and it tells you this is what's going to go in. And here are the criteria for the emissions that you're going to have to produce. There's not only a public comment period, there'll be public meetings. And all that gets expressed, the DEQ, and for them to grant the permit is based on the public input that they get, the concerned citizens, the comments they get. They go through those comments, and they have to, if you issue a comment, they'll give you a response to that comment. I hope I'm answering your question.
Superintendent mentioned here about like emissions. What type of emissions are coming out of there?
That's a good question. I guess want to know if toxic gas or some emissions came out. Our emissions, been a lot of discussion about it, but our emissions are monitored 24/7. Going forward, we'll be doing the same thing. We have a continuous emission monitoring system. It monitors 4 parameters. All this was set up at the very beginning with the EPA. In addition to that, we've done 3 stack tests. And these stack tests are where it's a sampling event where these third parties come in with a bunch of oversight from everybody from the EPA to their subcontractors, DEQ, and independent. The CAG had a designated person, Slavo Lomnicki, a doctor out of Baton Rouge, LSU. All these people observed our stack sampling, and then that stack sample went off to a lab, got analyzed, and came back. And those are all posted on our website. And just to point out, everything was non-detect. But one thing that's really important for y'all to understand is that not only did we sample the stack to check what was going on, but they ratified or they verified our emission monitoring program, our system, and they also established our operating parameter limits, which means the temperatures and the pressures that we have to operate. And I want y'all to understand that we're putting in the same thing with the same constituents in the same amount, we run in the same guidelines, and we get the same results out the back end. And we're required to do that by law. Well, he's been up longest.
I don't have any concerns about environment. My concern is how do you get it here?
Okay. And then, yeah. First of all, okay. Mm-hmm. Let me, I guess this question, just so I can repeat, make sure I answer it for everybody. How's it going to get to Camp Minden? How is this material that we would be taking, the propellant going forward, come into Camp Minden? There's been a lot of stuff out there. It will not be coming by rail, okay? Because there's a lot of regulations that require transportation of explosives for non-military use. If it was coming in, it will never come in by rail for several reasons. But the railroad in Camp Minden is really suitable for empty rail cars. It couldn't handle loaded ones. But we couldn't ship the stuff by rail because it has to be a dedicated train. It has to come, it can't stop anywhere. And it couldn't have anything else on it. So it really doesn't make sense. All of that material, the 20 million pounds that came in with Explo, came in by tractor trailer, semis. That's how it would come in. It would come in off of 20 and Goodwill Road and come in through the freight gate currently at Camp Minden. So it would be transported. It would be placarded as a explosive, just like everything else that comes and goes through Camp Minden right now for these other contractors. Did I answer your question? Yes, ma'am.
I just have something to say. I'm from Doyle. When you guys first got this contract, it was to bring this burn chamber in to destroy the M6 and to leave.
Yes, ma'am.
when I go buy a car, I don't need four Cadillac at the end of my last payment to tell me, well, let's extend this out.
Yes, ma'am, and you brought up, you have a valid point, because there was a contract, just like buying a car.
Any contract is binding.
Yes, ma'am.
When my contract is up, it's up.
Yes, ma'am, and you make a very good point.
And it's not only Expo, the citizens of Dorling have gone through GoEx, black powder, explosion. We're sick of it.
Sure, no, and I know, and I
So stick to your
sympathize.
contract.
Yes, well, and it's just like you use an analogy of buying a car. You know, some people go out and buy a car, right? And so you make your monthly payments.
Right.
And some people say, you know what, I'm supposed to make 60 payments or 48 payments. They decide they want a new car, so they trade it in. They don't honor that contract. Correct?
Okay.
Well, I'm asking.
Yeah.
We're asking about.
I'm not saying me as a consumer get to 48 and say, you know what, I want a 2018. I'm talking me as a citizen of Dorling, our Haughton resident, our Haughton neighbors, our Minden neighbors.
Sure.
You can go into Cotton Valley, whichever direction you want to go. Enough is enough.
Sure.
Where are you from?
I live in Baton Rouge.
You live in Baton Rouge. Take it to Baton Rouge.
That's fine. Listen.
Take it to Baton Rouge. What we need is somebody who's going to be here for the next 100 years, who's going to breathe, not from Baton Rouge, but from right here.
Can I answer your question rather than have a statement?
Answer.
I have a wife and a 6-year-old little boy. We have looked to a realtor to start finding us a place to move up here if we stay.
Yeah.
So you're telling me I'm not welcome?
Yeah.
Because you're asking me
Tell
not.
your wife, I got a spare room. Tell your wife and your child they're more than welcome to come to what I'm doing.
Okay. Go ahead.
That's only because you work and you draw a paycheck. When they came here, it was temporary. It was temporary.
We're gonna go down this road.
One of y'all, well, she's like, this is,
It's. Ken, we're 3,500 feet. How far are we, Ken? Oh, it's 1,250 feet. Well, we'll have to get we don't know exactly how far with this, way outside the fence. But no, listen, it's outside the fence of Camp Minden, and our radius is inside the fence of Camp Minden. Huh? 231 feet from the chamber is for the 880 pounds. So like we put in 880 pounds into that chamber. And that 231 feet is based on a high explosive. We did a more conservative approach, meaning when our safety manager was doing all this, we planned for not the 1.3 or 1.4 that we're handling, which is a propellant, which is gunpowder. We planned for like a high explosive like TNT, and that's 231 feet. It's just it is a quantitative distance, meaning if you're going to have 880 pounds of this explosive, for you to burn it, you need to be that far away. Did that make sense? It's a safety argument. Yeah.
Can you do a quick thing? If they ask a question, can you repeat it?
Yeah, I will.
Because we can't hear
Okay.
any question.
I think, and I got them talking to me too. I think your question was why the 200? Why do we have a distance? Okay. the chamber, when we burn in the chamber, it's inside, it's completely sealed, and the pressure goes up to 60 pounds. It's rated for 160, but it only goes up to 60, just over a little over a third of the pressure that it's rated for. And so that pressure in the chamber dictates us not going down there, or not being within the 231 feet. Did that make sense? Did I answer your question? Because the chamber is under pressure, and we don't want to have anything fail or anything happen down there. And it's a military standard. Well, yeah, well, okay. The question was, if you're inside that 231 feet radius around the chamber and something fails, well, all of our process is set to fail closed, meaning it stays closed. And again, we encourage y'all to come see it, but when we burn, it's completely sealed. It's sealed at the door and it's sealed at the valve on top. That valve fails closed, so it could stay indefinitely under pressure. It burns at 60 pounds of pressure, and in a matter of 2 minutes, it's down to about 20. In a matter of 3 minutes, it's on its own, with nothing going on, just it being closed up. And the pressure is equalizing in the chamber. We don't allow anybody to approach that area until it's under 15 pounds due to safety reasons for something down there. We have something under pressure, we don't need to be down there. That's it. In worst case scenario, if something, the chamber's rated for 160 pounds, it has a rupture disc, which is a round disc that will fail at 140 before the chamber itself will take it. Yes,
I'll
sir.
call a quick timeout. Oh, we'll give you one. Okay. Do you have something?
Sir, would you like to come up and say a few words?
Oh, I have a question.
A question, okay.
For the people who work at the chamber, is there any period of time during or after the burn that employees have to wear protective masks?
The question is, do any of the employees before or after during the burn have to wear a protective mask? Answer is no.
Let me answer this question a different way. Is your question motivated about an inhalation hazard or something, or like there isn't one? And I mentioned about the stack test. Again, all this information is on the internet, and some of it is very cumbersome, and I apologize. But one thing that's of interest is when we were doing our stack test, third-party observers, and one of them was Western Solutions, they do stack tests, and they were there to make sure our guys were collecting the samples correctly and handling everything correctly and in the right spots, and everything was under the right vacuum. After about day 4 or 5 of the testing, they said, you know, would it be all right with y'all, because it's so clean, for us to sample the outside air at the same time as the stack? And we said, we don't care. That's fine. You know, we would sample. So they on their own went out and did this. And it came back that our stack emissions were twice as clean as the air that we breathe. That's how clean this system is. And again, I would encourage y'all to come see it. So there is no need for us to be worried about it, because what we're producing is cleaner than the air that we breathe.
Thank you, Dean. Dr. Flournoy has a little bit to say here in a little bit, but I'm going to, one meetings I've been to, folks, what I've read about it, we can hash the environmental effects of it till doomsday. Everybody's going to have an opinion. And I'm going to bring us back to my original question. I'm not objecting to the burn chamber, I'm objecting to the location of it. There's got to be some place in continental United States that's better to process this product than out here. And that's kind of my point on it. I mean, we can wear this completely out. I know what Dr. Flournoy is going to say. It's real good, and it probably is. But the location just ain't right. It's not right in relationship to this town. And another point that was brought up to me, a question I'd like to throw out there for y'all to think about, is That man sitting right there, I got a lot of faith in him. But the question was brought up to me by an elected official, dialogue between two elected officials to go to Baton Rouge every time they have a session, is ESI is a good company. They got a good reputation, they're a good company. What if they sell out to somebody else? If somebody else takes over in 5 years, who are we going to be talking to then? Something happens to Mr. James Madden, his sons will take over, but if they sell out. But folks, life is, we can't predict none of it. But the difference here is we're dealing with basically explosive waste. And talking about volume that they process, if it comes in an 18-wheeler truck, that's a 50,000-pound load a day is about a payload on an 18-wheeler. If you took a load a day, what they've been processing, they've been very, very efficient doing it. But if you jammed in trucks, one after another in line, it would stretch from City Hall here to Dorleen. That's a pretty big delivery. You'd be waiting in line to dump in trucks if they all come one. They're obviously not going to come one day, but that's the volume we've been talking. You're shaking your head there, sir.
Do you honestly think we would line up 18-wheelers?
No, I do not think that, sir, but that's how much we're talking about.
That's against the law.
I ain't saying you're going to do that. I'm just talking about that volume. A lot of people don't know how much an 18-wheeler hauls, but it's 50,000 pounds. I ain't saying you're going to lump, I'm just saying that's how many trucks there would be, a load a day. A load a day.
They won't stack it up all the way to Dorleen.
No, I hope they unload it there, not in the highway, I sure do, sir. But anyway, that's, to put this in reference to something, folks, say one of these companies does go down. If this machine breaks down and they're backlogging it out there, it was too volatile to ship out of here to start with. That was a big story. We could not ship it out. It was just too volatile. But it's going to be okay to bring some of it in. But this is a question that man brought up to me. And what brought me here to this state was Louisiana Downs. A lot of people don't realize if you drive by Louisiana Downs every day, that corporation is in bankruptcy. And I promise you, they don't spend any more money on that backside of that racetrack than they have to. And y'all all remember the history of all of that. That involved the governor of the state of Louisiana and Eddie DeBarlow Jr., trying to buy licenses. Governor Edwin Edwards went to the penitentiary. But that was a question that was brought to me by an elected official, a major concern for him 4 or 5 years down the road. Are we dealing with a different set of people with different ethics? And who's to say that ESI is not going to have a problem, not with this? Louisiana Downs, that corporation is not in bankruptcy over Louisiana Downs. It's a whole Caesars entertainment all over the whole country. Are we going to be dealing with the same people a few years from now? Will this piece of equipment break down? Who's going to, every piece of machinery I've ever dealt with wore out at some point in time. And Dean run back up here, so I'm sure he's got a comment to make. So, does anybody else want to talk for a little bit? Have anything to say? Okay, I'm not saying they're going to do that. I'm just talking about that would be the volume of material. Okay, very good, Dean. Thank you.
I'm going to reflect on a point that he was trying to make about what ifs and what happens. And it's valid. It needs to be addressed. I need everybody to understand what Explo did is against the law. They were getting paid and they received this material. So they kept taking it and they kept going to the bank and putting the money in. Our process is operated under completely different regulations and oversight. They didn't have hardly any. We will have several, starting with the state of Louisiana's DEQ. We have to file every 90 days a report that says this is what we received and this is what we got rid of, and provide proof that we got rid of it. Okay? We're going to get paid on when the stuff is destroyed, unlike when it's unloaded from the truck. So to say, what if? We can't take anything in this facility that would last more. We have to prove that we got rid of something within 1 calendar year of the date that we received it, by law. Otherwise, we're done. So there is oversight here to prevent what you're asking about. One thing to be very clear about is we're not the first people in the world that have ever had a facility like this. They learned the wrong way about what you're talking about, the what ifs. Because these people, over time, the regulators got smart and said, here's what you do. We have to put up a bond so that we don't leave anything behind. The bond that we put up is through a third party to clean up our mess. So we have to have enough money set aside to clean up the mess. Explo didn't have to have that to have their contract out there. Completely different process. The regulations that we will be following by law require so much more and a lot more security for y'all to know that you'll never have that happen while we're at the helm. Even if somebody came in to replace us. We can't sell this company to somebody that's, Jason and I can't turn around and go sell this company to a third party without DEQ's approval. DEQ has to look at all this to see who would be buying this and make sure, one, the financial solvency of them, two, their reputation and their ability to follow the law.
Earlier you were talking about how clean the area is. How clean the area is going to be when you start bringing the other hazardous waste?
And his question was, you know, we talked about how clean the air is today. How clean would it be going forward? It would be just as clean, because what we put in that chamber will be the similar type material, propellants just like this. These are, propellants are nitrocellulose, like it's paper with nitrogen oxide on it. And there's different types that the military has, and they have a lot of it because it has a life. They track the stability of this material from the day it was made and I don't know if it's every year or every 5 years, but they have a whole program. Ken used to supervise it, this gentleman sitting here that works for us. And they watch it, and stuff that was stored overseas in a bunker in Saudi Arabia, they have a lot number, and they pull a sample, and it goes through, and they analyze for the stabilizing agent. And they watch it, and they see how much it's changed in the last year or 5 years, and they say, you know what? They're looking at a trend, and they're saying, this stuff needs to go. But it came to explode in a stable form. What they did is what made it unstable, unsuitable to be transported away. Did that answer your question?
I'm Dr. Robert Flournoy. I'm from Ruston. I'm a foreigner over here in a foreign country. Let me tell you, I've been in this, working on this project for about 3 years. The gentleman sitting in the audience is also one of the first people to bring to our attention the open burning that was going to happen at Camp Minden. I happen to have 3 grandchildren in Minden. I lived close enough to Minden that the open burn would have affected Ruston, southern Arkansas, Mississippi, all of northwest Louisiana. And I was determined when Brian and I got into this thing that we were not going to allow our citizens to be poisoned by toxic fumes, of which there are 5 chemicals in that M6. 2 of them are carcinogenic, meaning cancer causing. Okay? I'm a graduate at Texas A&M. I have 50 years experience in environmental toxicology. I finished in toxicology in the veterinary school, and I was just talking to the doc about it. But I've had several companies in Louisiana. I started out in 1972, and I had the first environmental firm in Louisiana in Ruston in a one-room building. I built it to 103 people. That with a consulting firm, with a firm that put in monitoring wells. The monitoring wells over there that monitoring the groundwater at the site. My company put in, I have none of those companies left. I'm an independent consultant, not paid by anybody. I'm not on anybody's staff. I'm trying to help the citizens and for all of you to understand that it's a safe procedure. I had the first application and the first person to be building a mobile incinerator to burn PCBs, which are in transformer oils, which are carcinogens. And I went to Washington and I was building that thing with a gentleman in Shreveport, Ringo, Florida, and myself. And we eventually sold the burn, the combustion chamber. So I know a little bit about it. I was over last week, and I've been over several times to the site. And I can tell you, from an environmental scientist standpoint, who helped write the hazardous waste regs in this state in 1980, I helped train, my firm trained the original people to make up DEQ. 27 people came over from health and hospitals
And now they have 400 in several, probably 8 or 10 different offices, Lake Charles and all over the state. And I can tell you, as I told Governor Jindal a couple of years ago, before the current governor came in, that I suspect that his department has grown too large and is inefficient in many ways. And that's one of the things that I have trouble with right today is some trust I have in our regulatory officials, both EPA and DEQ. And I know the people at DEQ, I know the people at EPA. I've worked with them over the years, and I've been in this business, folks, for 40 years. I've been in the most hazardous waste you can imagine. Be thankful that you live in North Louisiana where you don't have a hazardous waste site, because we did the first study in this state of the 9 hazardous waste sites defined by EPA, and guess what? 8 of them were in South Louisiana. Sites that you would not believe. Old refineries, old dumping grounds, just everything you can imagine. I can sit here for 2 evenings and tell you everything we encountered. Drums labeled waste from the North Reactor. You think we weren't kind of, scared to go in there with a North Reactor, radiation reactor? So anyway, I want to tonight deal with facts. I'm a scientist. That's what I learned through my scientific training, to deal with facts. And I want to put to rest some of these concepts that people have that trucking this material in. Folks, you cannot truck in hazardous waste of any kind into any establishment without a permit. Both the trucker, the trucking firm, or the company that's going to send it there, and you have to have a tracking system to be able to know what's coming in, how much, and it has to be signed off. And it's not something that just, here, I'm going to call, pick up the phone, and I'm going to do this. You got to have certain permits, and it's DOTD, it's state police. The state police training hazardous waste workers. We used to do that ourselves. But so many of you are afraid of what's going on. And I'll tell you, as a young graduate student at Texas A&M, I dealt with radiation in a chamber with animals, of which I was not radiated, but I had to wear a badge to make sure I wasn't getting radiated. And it was the same radiation that the atom bomb dropped when Hiroshima was devastated. And so we were the first ones to do a study in the United States to find out if the plane and survivors, the pilots, could get back in the crew. But nevertheless, I know you don't. I'm just trying to give you a little background. But the facts are that the waste that is destroyed over at the combustion chamber is destroyed to 99.999, 5 nines. In other words, what comes in the 880 pounds of ammunition, you can go over there and see it, put in the chamber, and burn, becomes an ash. And that ash is not hazardous. It's taken to an approved landfill and deposited in Monroe, Louisiana, but it's destroyed to 99.999. Now, each of you in here every week are pumping gas in your cars. And that's a sidetrack, but to put it in proper perspective, the fumes from that gasoline contain benzene, which is the #1 chemical that EPA, OSHA, and all of them have declared as the most hazardous substance, and it causes leukemia. It's in your gasoline, and you breathe it every time that you put it in your car. So what you have over here is nothing compared to that. You have a series of chemicals that are stored to 99.999. And that's a safety factor. And you ought to be really pleased that you have people like myself and others that are doing this. I'm not getting anything out of it. I'm doing this because I have a passion for people's health. And I want to help you to stay safe and your children. Yes, sir.
Burning propellant to burning some other hazardous waste, does the parameters change as far as the instrumentation that you have to measure?
It depends on what the contents are of the material that's coming in. Now, yes, you have.
How would you handle
you'd have to have more analytical tools. I had a laboratory that had $1 million worth of tools to detect things like that. And Dean, you want to address that?
You didn't repeat the question. You're supposed to repeat.
You're supposed to repeat your question. The question was, if you bring in a material other than like a propellant, and it's got hazards associated with it, will the emissions be the same? Is that your question?
Well, with the instrumentation that you have measuring the propellant, will it handle the, whatever the other substance is? You
Yes.
have to change all of that every time you change.
No, the equipment that we have out there right now that's doing the monitoring, and let me take a step, the question was, will the equipment that we have that's monitoring the stack continuously now be suitable for whatever we put in it in the future? Did I get it right that time? Well, the question is yes, because what we can put in that chamber, we're monitoring 4 parameters: oxygen, nitric oxides, carbon monoxide, and the total hydrocarbon, which is where all the carcinogens, all the nasty ones that he talked about.
I believe the scientists would tell you that's not necessarily so.
And meaning, let me finish real quick. So for us to receive any material, it's going to have a certificate of analysis, and it's also going to have generator knowledge. Whoever is sending it to us is the generator of this material that we're receiving. So they'll have analytical in that, which when it comes to us, for us to receive it, we have to give them authority for us to receive it. We'll know what is coming in that manner. Now, we're not planning on burning anything that we can't test in our stack emissions. And our regulations and our permit will dictate that. Meaning, we list down all the materials that we think we want to put through this chamber. Every one of those has what can be generated off of it. When we look at what can be generated off of it, we have to prove it again. We have to do a comprehensive stack test. And there's what they call a treatability study. Meaning, if we say we're going to burn M6 propellant, and we want to go to M30 propellant, well, they look at it and say, well, this is what's in M30. It's a little different, but is it worse? Is analytically what has to get done? And you have to prove and test and do a treatability study that you were able to remove everything down to what we're doing now. Did that make sense?
Can I ask a question real quick? The burn chamber you explained pretty well as far as the pressure and all in there. You also said that you're required to get rid of that propellant within a year. So while we're waiting, if things stack up, I know not 16 million pounds like it has, 16 million tons, however many it was. What happens? Where is it stored before it gets in there? When a truck gets dropped off, is it stored in a place? What happens when a lightning strikes?
Yes. Then my partner Jason used to regulate that. The state police, the state of Louisiana, regulate storage and handling of explosives. So each one of our individuals, and several of them in the back of the room, are licensed not only by the federal government but by the state of Louisiana as far as being able to handle explosives. When the material is received, it has to be stored in an explosive magazine with all these other criteria associated with it. When they found all this material out at S-Line behind Explo's operation, one of the first things they did is put it in a magazine. They put it in 91 magazines or something like that because they had so much to store. And so they put all this material into an explosive magazine. Those explosive magazines are engineered to be able to, in fact, one went off September 30th with that CBI. It performed as expected, as it was designed to do, and prevented anything else from any offsite impact or any of the other magazines from being damaged. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I'll sit up for you here. Are you talking about us bringing something until we start?
No, he said that you had a year to get rid of it. You don't get paid until it's destroyed. And if you have a year, my thought is how much can be stockpiled in that year? And then if there is an explosion, we talked about the burn chamber and the pressure and 231 feet. But if something explodes while it's waiting to go into the chamber.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to make sure you're clear on, when I say we have a year to get rid of it, if we took it in today, we have until 1 calendar year from today to prove to the state and federal government that we got rid of it, that particular material that we took in today. It's not, we can stockpile everything for a year and then start working it off. Did that answer your question? So it's a date of, a year from the date of receipt.
Y'all are asking us to trust the same agencies that got us in this mess in the first place.
Actually, we're not, ma'am. Her question, I don't know if that was a question. That was more of a statement. The statement was that we're asking y'all to trust the same agencies that got y'all into this mess to begin with. And absolutely, emphatically not. The agencies had zero oversight. L&D inherited a contract. We're going to put all the cards on the table. L&D, Louisiana Military Department, Camp Minden, had a contract that when they took over possession of the facility from the Army in 2004, Explo was operating there. Explo's contract is with the federal government, with the Army. They did not, military department, state of Louisiana could not go in there and routinely inspect them. Their contract didn't allow that. They inherited this contract. Doesn't make it right, but that's how it was. Going forward, we're going to be inspected by L&D, but in addition to that, DEQ had zero oversight of Explo's operation. The reason being, they were operating as a D-mill contractor. They were not operating as a treatment facility, which was not regulated by the state of Louisiana's DEQ. So they didn't have a permit or anything that would have gone through DEQ. The state police do have regulatory ability in Louisiana over all explosive operations. Not only that, ATF has explosive responsibility, and the U.S. military has a group that is required to oversee that if things were demilled. I'm not saying they did anything wrong, but we're going to be regulated by many more agencies with quarterly requirements that we have to produce documents showing what we took in and what we got rid of. Explo never had that. That's why they were able to get away with what they did to create that mess.
You said that you're required to destroy it within a year from the day you get it. How often is a delivery brought in? So if you get a delivery 15 days later, then something going to be still, as we said, stockpiled. And how often do you get stuff in within that year that has enough year for the new delivery?
Yeah, so his question is if, you know, how large of deliveries are you get, how frequently do we get them, and how do we know you're not just stockpiling the material, waiting on, is that the question? Okay, I want to make sure I get it right, but we have 1 year to get rid of it from the day we receive it. We're going to transport it. They're not going to transport Saturday and Sunday. So say we get 7 trucks a week. We do about, if our operation operates as it's designed, it would be about 50,000 pounds a day is where we operate. And as you mentioned, that's about a truckload. So 1 truckload, we'll be getting rid of a truckload a day. Now, we're not going to take a truckload in and then burn it and wait for the next truck and shut the system down. So we will have 30 days worth of inventory on hand just so that we can continue our operation without interruptions, without any issues with the stuff. So we're not going to, you know, go past that, but we'll have stuff come in, have enough of it so we can keep working. But one of the things that's important, and we talked about the jobs, and I'm going to say this real quick. Explo had 80 people on the payroll full-time receiving this material and taking apart and separating out the M6 propellant from the CDI from the black powder. They had an assembly line where they were receiving it, getting the waste out this way, taking all the material, and they were, instead of getting rid of it, they were boxing it up or bagging it up. We have 35 people that are doing the tail end of what Explo had 80 people doing for years. So when we talk about employment, everybody, there was stuff out there about, 35 jobs and 16 million pounds. If you go to 100, you're going to have 3 times that volume coming through. Absolutely not. the people that we're gonna be employing are gonna have to do that front end work from receiving it to getting it ready to go into our chamber. We still need the 35 to get rid of it through our process, but we're gonna need 75, 80 people on the front end to do that work.
Thank you, Dean. We have some good questions. I appreciate everybody showing good manners, and that's very important. Yes.
This is all figured off one chamber. Is it true that you guys would look to bring like businesses to this area and grow into something even bigger? And then we're talking about more trucks coming in?
I'm going to repeat your question because he taught me well. The question was, everything that we're talking about tonight is about based on one chamber. And I know there was other stuff talked about us putting 5 chambers out there. Not going to happen.
What about the kiln though? That wasn't discussed either.
We did talk about a kiln, and the kiln is not anything that we're looking to do now. The kiln would have to be substantiated by a feed stream. Certain materials are more suited to be disposed of through a rotary kiln than in our chamber. Our chamber is good, but it's not designed to handle a lot of different things.
So you want to grow
something.
here?
Huh?
So you want to grow here? You want to bring
Yes, yes.
Okay.
But we would do it in a responsible way with the same kind of pollution abatement that we have. The company that engineered this contained burn chamber is out of Salt Lake City, Utah. They're world renowned. They do these things all over the world. They have a rotary kiln in Belgium that is very similar in emissions to what we do. In fact, our pollution abatement was copied off of that system over there.
Can you get Dr. Flournoy to explain what happens when one of those bumpers blows up, as far as the emissions that come off of that?
This is a question for Dr. Flournoy about what happens when a bunker blows up, about the emissions there. I do want to, James Madden's walked up here, Mr. Zach Burson he's an educator here in town, and Dr. Salvatore is here. I'd like him to have a little rebuttal here. I would like to respond to a couple things Dr. Flournoy said. He's a fellow Methodist like me, so I hope we can trust him, but anyway, another concern expressed to me by another elected official from Baton Rouge, from here that goes to Baton Rouge, is the state got enough money to do all this properly as far as the regulations? And that's a question in my mind. And he said some of this movement from the federal government, everything's going to get more lax on the EPA. And all this paperwork is all great. Folks, I sign health certificates on livestock shipping interstate every day. I'd say 95% of them never get looked at by anybody. It doesn't leave me a lot of confidence, who's checking them, who's actually doing all of this. And I'm still waiting to hear one thing from somebody that's a plus for Bossier Parish and Haughton School District. Mr. James Madden's come up here, maybe he can help me with that, but I'm still looking for something that's going to be a positive for the Haughton School District, the Doyle School District. Zach, would you come up here and say a few words? Yes, to.
Yeah. I'm not going to talk very long. Last year, at this time, last week, Gene Reynolds received the Governor's Conservation Award as an elected official. He did that because of the hard work of the citizens of Camp Minden, working with scientists, Dr. Salvatore, and I hope he does come up here and talk, and Dr. Flournoy, who recognized the danger in a way that challenged elected officials at the EPA and elected officials in Baton Rouge to act responsibly and answer to the citizens. And they brought in these good people here who had a state-of-the-art mechanism to dispose of the waste that had been disposed of improperly or not disposed of. However, in the same state of Louisiana, we have open burning going on in Colfax because the people did not raise the same cane. They didn't have the same elected officials. They didn't have the same voice that we had here. And the difference that I see is, the basic question Dr. Moore is asking is, do you want to raise your children and grandchildren in the presence in an economy that boosts hazardous waste disposal? even if they're using the state-of-the-art technology and have the highest standards professionally? Basic question. The other basic question is this. The DEQ, last year, when John Dale Edwards came into office, their 1,000 employees that had formerly been there, that number had been reduced to 677. So I don't think they had too many people stepping over themselves to regulate oil field waste, the waste that we have here. If you travel the waters of this area, you know there are not a lot of watchdogs out there. If you've been on Bayou Darchi, you know there are not a lot of watchdogs. That's all I have to say.
Dr. Flournoy, would you like to address a question directed to you about what happens in an explosion in a bunker, and then let Mr. James go next?
Well, you have 5 chemicals there. Phthalates, you have diphenyllamine, dinitrotoluene. Those are going to be emitted on the detonation. We'll have some of those emissions. You don't have them now, but thank goodness y'all are breathing clean air up here, except for Shreveport, Longview, and places like that that are emitting particulates and things like that. But you're going to have, when those ammunition goes up, when they burn, so you're going to have the
Do you have any idea about how much? And the 3 bunkers that's been blown up in the last year, how much emissions come out of that?
I have no idea. Yes, sir. I can't hear you. You want to come up here?
Referring back to Mr. Sullivan's question about the emissions, they said there's 4 things that are monitored.
Right.
Hydrocarbons are one of them.
Right, THCs.
But they're not breaking down the hydrocarbons into the carcinogens, and the hydrocarbons can be a whole lot higher level than the carcinogens in the hydrocarbons. So where are they breaking it down to show us what the cancer-causing carcinogens are in the hydrocarbons, or you're just lumping hydrocarbons into one ball?
Total hydrocarbons, but I don't think there was any, Dean, there was no requirement, was there? There was no requirement to identify each hydrocarbon individually by the state, was there? Yeah, in the stack testing, but not in the final product, the ash and everything.
So the carcinogens can just be dumped out there at any quantity.
Well, not at the temperature they're using. They're getting up to 1900 degrees, and that's going to destroy the samples. I mean, I can tell you.
The question is speciating the different hydrocarbons, looking at each individual one. In every aspect of what leaves our site, it's been done. Meaning, we had a stack test, and the list is long, it's on the internet, but everything, it was looked for, from acetone down to xylene, from A to Z. They looked at it, volatile and semi-volatile. The 3 Ds that Dr. Flournoy spoke about, the dibutyl phthalate, the diphenyllamine, and all those, dinitrotoluene, those are semi-volatiles. Those are the principal organics that are in M6. And that's when he talks about the 5 nines and being able to reduce it down to non-detect and reporting limits from the lab. That's what he's talking about. That's what that equipment was supposed to do. But all the benzenes and the toluenes and the acetone and everything was looked at in the stack test, which has been done 3 times.
And they are below.
Yes, it's below. The lab can measure down to the part per billion with a B, and it's down to like many of these, and there's a list online, but it's like less than 0.04 parts per billion is their detection limit. They just report it out as a less than, because that is the reporting limit or the detection limit that the lab can do. But when they look at it, it says, look, we can't detect it, is what it is essentially. And is there a question?
Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Okay, did I answer your question? Okay.
Dean, the question is actually for you. There's been some controversy over the negative numbers that are showing on the website and the stack deal.
Yeah.
Can you address how those negatives are there and what caused them?
Sure. His question, boy, we're getting y'all and these scientists by the end of the night. But the question was, on our monitoring, again, this is what we monitor 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We'll have a number that is a negative. And the negative might be negative 0.01 or negative 0.5 or something like that. And the question is, how can you have a negative emission? And it's a very valid question. And maybe I should put something on the internet to explain it. But every day, our instrumentation has to be calibrated. And it's an automatic calibration. And it's done by shooting a zero in a certain span gas. For example, the total hydrocarbon, which is where your carcinogens would be, the total hydrocarbon, the range of our piece of equipment is from 0 to 15 ppm. So every day at 4:45 in the afternoon, the equipment gets calibrated automatically. And there's a gentleman in the back that deals with this and has been intimate with it. He runs the plant. We zero it, and we have to shoot a gas that comes in at 12.81 ppm. It can be plus or minus 3% of that 12.81 and the zero, 3% of the zero value of 15, and to be in calibration. So the accuracy of that meter is plus or minus 3%. Now it gets longer math and this, that, and the other, but when you see a negative value, it's because the meter is calibrated, and sometimes we're looking from 0 to 15 on the THC, but on our NOx, we have a range that is from 0 to 4,800, and we're trying to zero 3% off of 4,800 and 3% off of that whole range. And so when we're operating at a zero, sometimes it's still in calibration, but it's so far below the zero that it comes up with a negative number. The accuracy of the meter is the limitation. Did I answer?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? I'm James Madden, and I'm from Minden, and I'm sure y'all have all heard enough of this scientific talk tonight. I'm probably as confused as I was when I got here. I want you to think about one thing, is that we are a country, a nation that has not been afraid. And you say, well, you're asking us to risk our lives, risk our health, risk our well-being. And I challenge you to ask yourself this question. That plant was built, the ordnance plant was built in 1941. That's been, 60, 70 years ago. And during that period of time, there has not been one person that has been injured, much less killed, outside the perimeter fence of the facility. The people of the United States saw fit to build that ordnance plant because we were at war. And our country called on us to help. That's what happened. And what happened when they built that thing, what came into being? 10,000 plus jobs. Those jobs were good jobs, and what happens is that really Boleyn came into being largely because of the ordnance plant. Dixie Inn came into being largely because of the ordnance plant. As did West Minden, and to a degree, some of Haughton. People came here looking for jobs, good jobs, jobs that paid well. They all accepted that there was an inherent risk to what they were doing. Everybody knew what they were doing out there stood a chance of having an explosion, a life lost. Fortunately, they didn't have too much of that. What we face here today is an opportunity, and what I'm telling you is this. is this, to me, presents a moment of opportunity, and people call it Camp Minden, and the reason that I'm here tonight is that Camp Minden represents an opportunity for us to resurrect our ordinance plan. We have a 15,000 acre reservation out there that there exists today. There exists today an agreement that the state of Louisiana signed, and they call it the Fawcett Agreement, and which says in layman's language that you cannot use that property, that ground, that facility for anything other than like kinds of business. The work that ESI is doing out there is a like kind of business. In other words, Holt's Bread Company could not go out there and build a new plant. They can't do it. They can't use it. So we've got 15,000 acre we've got a 15,000 acre reservation out there that the federal government gave it to our state and said, okay, develop something out here and help your unemployment situation. That's what this thing is somewhat about. You say, well, we're not interested in that. I did not take much interest in this thing until later on, and I saw some value that things needed to be looked at. The first thing I did, I armed myself with knowledge, the engineering, the science, and the facts. What we have a lot of these questions are questions that people asking because they're fear questions. We're afraid. Americans aren't afraid. We know what we're doing, and we make good decisions. And I want to say this to you tonight here, those for and those against, that I appreciate you coming, I appreciate your questions, I appreciate you listening, but I would say this to you, that most of us, and I include myself, do not know the technical questions and answers that many of us maybe attempt to get an answer to. We have our scientists and people here who can answer those kind of questions, but really when you hear them, really you don't know what they mean. They're just questions. What you've got to ask yourself is this: do we take this facility out here with a 16 million pound proven record that they can safely, from an environmental standpoint, can they have safely gotten rid of that much product out there? Are you afraid of that? I don't think so. You weren't afraid when you had the ordinance plan out there. And we built this area and we made our homes here. I don't think the American people are afraid. I think the American people want to get informed, and I think they want to know the truth. And for that, I applaud you for being here tonight and asking the questions. I think there's been a lot of misinformation out there, and I think there's been a lot of emotion out there, and there's been a lot of even hysteria about what this thing is. That's not who we are. Let's get the information, let's get the facts, let's look at the engineering, let's look at the science, and let's make a decent decision. Because if we don't, and I'm going to tell you this one thing that happened to me at Christmas. I had a guy been gone for 30 years, retired military, came home. I just happened, he came by my office, I hadn't seen him in 30 years. He came by and we got to talk a little bit about this thing. He said, Mr. Madden, he said, how do you feel about Bossier Parish? And I didn't really know where he was going with this question. And I said, well, I guess I can answer you like this. There are 6 generations of Maddens in the Minden area. And I told him, I said, I love my parish, I love my people. This is where we put down our roots, this is where we have our home. Our office, our business is probably, as the crow flies, is probably a couple of miles from the chamber. I'm not afraid of it. And the reason I'm not afraid of it is because I armed myself with knowledge and fact, and I got satisfied that science and technology had let us have a facility. It gave us a facility that can adequately, safely, and environmentally take care of this issue. I'm asking you tonight to consider what I've said and consider what my friend told me. He said, Mr. Madden, we don't have any jobs. He said the ordnance plants are gone. The Spring Hill paper mill's gone. The plywood, 2 plywood plants are gone. And he kept naming, and I really kind of caught me off guard by all that. But what I'm saying to you, if we're to, and I'll back up a minute and say this, and to Mr. Hicks here, I think he's been a very forceful man to help bring this thing to attention out here, and I think it's important. I think good dialogue is important. But I think we have to consider all the facts. We have to separate the truth from the fantasy, and there's been a lot of that goes on. Y'all know that, I know that. And I ask you just to make a good decision. And if we can keep this burn chamber, I feel relatively comfortable that we will put a good business out here that'll have 135 good paid jobs, and we will have a facility that will adequately and safely dispose of these munitions. Now, some of you are, like I say, will never change your mind, and I understand that. And some of you will. But I want you to understand that we're dealing with a company, a very good company, a very reputable company with cutting edge technology. And they do, as I said earlier, I don't know how much more proof you want than what they have demonstrated by getting rid of about 16 million pounds out there. That's about as good as you get. But anyway, I thank you for listening to me. I thank you for your attention. And I ask you to weigh what I've said, make a good decision, but make the decision not of fear, not of hearsays, and not of emotions. Make the decision based off good engineering, good facts, and the truth. Thank you.
You say make a good decision, is the decision up to us?
Basically because we are a free society, and basically because your voice is important. And people listen to people such as yourself that came here tonight to get informed of the truth, of the facts, and men like you make a difference. In government and the society we live in, people are the ultimate voice. And yes, you make a difference.
Could you say a little bit louder, ma'am? No, ma'am, that has been a misconception. I think a lot of people feel like an issue this big, it would come before an election. You know, we'd have a lot of information out there about it, a lot of debate about it, but it's really not. It's in the governor's hands. That reminds me, I have some paperwork over here. I welcome you to pick it up. I have my resolution. I have resolutions that's from the Citizens Awareness Group. If you're comfortable with it, I guess you tell your elected officials that. If you're not, I encourage you to call your elected officials, write them. I have the information right over if you want to pick it up. If you want to sign any of the forms we have as far as you're a concerned citizen, you're not for this. Because really, a lot of good points have been made here. An ordnance plant was certainly, just like Mr. James said, but it seems like, I'm going to bring us back to the question that I brought up. Are we willing to accept the outside waste just to be disposed of here? Obviously in a clean way. I'm just like Mr. James. I can talk these figures all night long. I still don't understand them. But are we willing to accept this as a community to bring all this? Are we going to be one of the nation's biggest, military and industrial explosives disposal sites? And that brings me back to that point. Are people going to want to move in here next to that? Reception just ain't good. We can talk cleanup forever, and but that's got a question here in the back, please. I believe I'm understanding the question, what was the plan as far as taking the chamber down and being relocated?
Where would they relocate?
Where would they relocate it? Is there, anybody want to answer that? I mean, I think the original contract said it would be dismantled and moved out and the site actually straightened back up like it was before. Maybe the trees planted, I don't know. Ms. James, coming back up.
One thing I want to tell y'all that probably most of you don't know. I got a flyer in the mail last week. The city of El Dorado, Arkansas has put in a new facility. Three new burn chambers, and they have expanded their operation to 120 employees. And what they will have up there is the backing of the entire, it was a big ribbon cutting. And you say, well, why don't you take it the other way? Well, because it's a good business. It's a good business. And that's just, they talk about bringing all the stuff from all over the United States here. That's not going to happen. This will be a limited facility that will take care of what they get in the time of night, as you've heard of that. But right here at El Dorado, Arkansas, there is a facility that's 3 times as big. They had the ribbon cutting last week, and the city of El Dorado gave it thumbs up. They were proud to have it.
So, say it again, George.
He didn't answer the question. What do they plan on doing if the contract is held up and they have to disassemble the burn chamber and move it? Where will they go?
Does anybody want to address that question? There's not an answer, they say right now. They say there's not an answer right now. Okay, Dr. Flournoy just said that the mayor of Ruston said he would take it. So, I guess that's good news, folks. I guess that's probably the best news we've heard all night. I have some people asking for Dr. Salvatore to come and speak, but I'm glad to hear that the mayor of Ruston is wanting that. So that would be good, very good news for the growth here in Haughton, I feel like. Thank you.
Dr. Moore, I have one question. What happened to the future I-69 corridor that's supposed to be coming through? Isn't that going to come somewhere between there and Highway 164?
I can't believe that she brought up a point that was going to be one of my main talking points tonight, but does anybody here know where I-69, if it ever does show up, where it's supposed to come? I'm pretty sure the burn chamber will get moved in because it's sitting in the right of way. But, you know, that's something that I hope we see at some time. You know, let's propose route for I-69. And I hope we do everything we can to draw there, because there's a place called Texas. I think they want every mile of it. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say, number one, I'm not afraid. I'm a proud American. I'm not afraid of what's going on here. I'm resolved. Follow through the contract that was signed. You said yourself we need to have some dialogue. We had a dialogue. We worked for 2 years. I've learned more stuff about chemistry and science than I ever wanted to know or cared to know. And it's because of these scientists and politicians and toxicologists and teachers and regular citizens that came together that educated themselves to get this far. And y'all signed the agreement, and it should be honored. Yes. Yes. I don't think there should be much more dialogue. It was already researched and studied and decided upon, and the politicians listened. And ma'am, I don't know if she's left already, but if they have a vote, we do it away. It's through your state representatives. It's through your senators. It's through your police jury. It's through the governor. It's through all of the elected officials. And if they don't listen to your voice, vote them out. And so all I have to say, main thing, we appreciate ESI. brought you on here because we knew you were the best. And we knew that you would take care of it in a safe, good way. And you've done that, and we applaud you and all the employees, I don't know which one you are, for putting yourself in danger. That's your choice, but it was temporary, and that was in the contract too. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Dr. Salvatore, maybe have a little bit to say about some of the emissions and so forth.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. I'm Brian Salvatore, and I'm a member of the CAG, the Citizens Advisory Group. Not a member of the board, but I go to the meetings, and I do the best I can to offer advice. The CAG, I don't think, has been treated always fairly or shown appreciation. I'm talking about the regular board members. They did not ask to be in the middle of a controversy here. They're trying to do the best that they could do to uphold the dialogue committee's recommendations. And some of you may not know the difference between the dialogue committee and the CAG. The dialogue committee was a group of about 45 people, government officials, federal officials, military, state, local citizens. We even had the Shreveport mayor had representatives. And the universal agreement on that dialogue committee was that this chamber would go when the job was done. And that doesn't mean that we don't appreciate the job that the company has done. We certainly do. I do. And you know, when I raise concerns like I raise concerns about the inhalation hazards, I'm not looking to be in the middle of a controversy. I read the proposal from ESI and Eldorado, and they themselves said that if the packaging material could not be burned, that they themselves were worried about inhalation. And so I read that, and I sent emails to the company just to say, well, when I took the tour, I saw there wasn't any protection, and yet the EPA is not allowing you to use this packaging because they're afraid about dioxins being produced from the plastics. And so the company, they take it upon themselves to use that as an opportunity every time they go out to say, well, look at this, you know, mad scientist, they don't use those words, but sometimes I feel like they're treating me that way. Look what this mad scientist is saying here, this has no credibility. We go up to Arkansas, we'll get the National Center for Toxicology, come down here and prove everything he's saying is wrong. Well, I asked them now, okay, so you contradicted your own proposal. Let me see what the National Center for Toxicology did. How did they do this test? Oh, we don't need to show you, we got our own experts. So who are the experts? I see Dr. Lamnicki was mentioned from Baton Rouge, he's a friend of mine, but when I called Dr. Lamnicki 3 weeks ago and I asked him, you know, what is your interaction, what is your contact with the EPA about this burn chamber and about the safety? He says, oh, I haven't been contacted since last June. They haven't contacted me. So the CAG is being put in a difficult position here because I'm talking about the board. They're not being sent the experts that are being claimed here. And anytime that I'll try to say something, I'm working up until a week ago with redacted information. And I was quoted in the paper a week ago for saying something. They didn't mention that was while the information was still redacted. We have to go out and try to find, to the best of our ability, similar systems here. I still have concerns about the sensors. When Ms. Blaylock, who's a member of the CAG board, raised the point that, look, your continuous monitoring is not looking for the materials that we're actually concerned about. And they say, well, it's okay, the quarterly monitoring is doing that. You can be sure when the quarterly monitoring comes in, they're going to be at the top of their game and everything's going to be great. But what about the continuous monitoring? So Ms. Blaylock, if you don't know her, she was the first person that alerted us all to the dangers of the open burn. So she asked that question, and the answer that was given by Mr. Schellhase was, well, you still have the total organic content SEMS monitoring, that hydrocarbon sensor. So, you know, I asked questions about that. I said, well, this total hydrocarbon content is all over the place. And I'll tell you, I'll go look at October 1st. it was 2,080 parts per billion. And yet, when they go around and give talks, they're telling us that it's less than 10 parts per billion. So it's all over the place. And yeah, sometimes it's negative 600 parts per billion. How can you have a negative concentration? Dean explained it. But I said to my wife, it's like saying, you know, honey, I'm going on a diet, and guess how good I'm doing? Now I have a negative waistline. That doesn't make any sense. You can't have a negative concentration. So basically what they're telling us is they chose a sensing system for continuous monitoring, the total hydrocarbon content, but the dilution of the system is so great that the sensitivity and the drift are exceeding the information they can get out of it. So it's really not useful. So we suggested other things, mass spectrometry, that you can monitor in real time. We're told, well, you can put it, you know, that's what they have here at Haughton Middle School. That's what they have up in Princeton. Well, why don't they have that on the site? Why don't they have that on Piney Forest Drive, where there's houses 7/10 of a mile away from the chamber? And I went over there and I asked the people, what do you think about this? And somebody there said, well, somebody from the company told us don't talk to you. And I said, well, I want to ask some questions. He said, well, we'll talk to you. We don't want this chamber here. But, you know, the people should be the ones that have to say it here, not the money. Okay? It's the people. One last question. So this faucet agreement, which is mentioned many times, what do you call it? Do you call that a contract? My understanding is it was an agreement for early transfer, which meant that it was an initial set of guidelines. So you have a contract, which is up here in importance. You have an agreement here, which is an initial set of guidelines. They just told us we could get out of a contract. A contract, right? They said it's like trading in your car. Well, what about this set of guidelines? Couldn't we get out of that or at least modify it to suit modern times rather than something 15 years ago? I would think so.
I have a question here that still hasn't got answered. And that's a question that anybody brought up. Is there going to be any benefit tax-wise for Bossier Parish or Bossier Parish School Board? Is that, James, can you answer that for me, please?
Based off the work that will be done out there, it runs from $6 to $10 million a year in tax revenue. That's income tax, sales tax, and use tax that the parishes would and state would get a year. $6 to $10 million.
Let me put something out there too. We are not asking for any tax abatement. Many places they go out there and they offer stuff to try and attract businesses. We're going to pay every fair share of tax that we can in support of this because, you know, we have to be the right solution. It has to be responsible business. Oh, well, since I got this, let's talk about Dr. Salvatore's comment. I had to make a list, and he and I, evidently he's come out and seen our site. And I appreciate that. I would encourage the rest of y'all to come. But one of the things that he brought up, and this is getting back to the hype and the hysteria, he made a comment, and I take it very personal about our missions. And I'm a very passionate person about this, because when you come out and see it, you believe, and you'll see it for yourself. But he stated that THC was some ridiculous number on October 1st. And how could that be? September 30th, the magazine exploded over at L2. We were down October 1st. So we're not burning anything. We're worried about a number because we had to turn the unit off. And so there is nothing that we're hiding from anybody. We've seen a lot of stuff out there about our missions being far greater than what they truly are. It's not the case. Please, as Mr. James said, get the facts and learn the facts. The faucet agreement you bring up, it's a contract. It absolutely is a contract. I've read it. It's a long contract. It has a clause in there for amending that contract. It's the Secretary of the Army. He has to sign off if they want to do something different. It's in that contract. It was clear. He has to be the one, the Secretary of the Army. So don't say, hey, that thing can't be amended. There is an avenue to amend it, just like our contract has an avenue. It's been amended 7 times, people. We've amended our contract. We were supposed to burn that CBI in our chamber. We didn't. We had to do an amendment. We had unexplained costs come up for extra environmental things that we did. We had to amend the contract. That's all we're doing. It's an instrument to amend the contract. But we, again, want it to be the right thing. But please look at the facts.
Does amending it mean extending it?
No, sir. No, sir. We're not extending the contract.
Question, please. But the question is, can they guarantee the surveillance and everything, that not be an accident, that the equipment is monitored properly? Can they state that fact?
There's a gentleman in the back that's asking if you can guarantee that you're going to wake up in the morning. A guarantee. Let me tell you something about our system. Again, come see it and you'll understand exactly how it operates. The beauty of this system is that when we burn something in that chamber, it is sealed. It can remain sealed indefinitely. So in the event that something does fail, we can correct it. If it sat there for 2 weeks in that chamber, it's completely sealed and safe. Understand, as Mr. James asked you, understand what it is that's out there. It's not something to where we're going to admit something that's going to be inhaled. Everything is under a vacuum. If a pipe were to leak, it's going to suck in outside air. It stays in a negative vacuum throughout the whole process. Everything is monitored through one source. Nothing can escape our system without it coming through the stack and being treated, with everything operating as designed to make sure we don't have anything. I'm not saying we're perfect, man. I'm saying understand the process and understand and evaluate the risk associated with it. I respect your position. I fully do. I understand, but please come see it and understand it before you judge it as is it risky or not.
I'd like to address part of this. At a meeting in Minden, I was sitting beside Mr. John Madden, we had a discussion about this. And I asked him, I said, can you guarantee me you cannot have an accident that's going to hurt somebody, destroy property, or anything? He said, no, I cannot tell you that, but wait and listen to David's presentation. So I did. A lady asked David, said, my windows get blown out of my house. Took forever to get them fixed. One of the other accidents I guess. What are we going to do about getting our property fixed? This falls back to some things all anybody are concerned about is money. Because David said, I cannot guarantee you that there would never be an accident, but we've got this big insurance policy, then we've got this big umbrella over that, and then we've got a bond. Well, and he will make us whole again. Straight out of David's mouth. I ain't making it up. John will tell you, he said it. He was sitting there right beside me when David said it. Now, your insurance policy, and David Madden, and James Madden, and John Madden, if my granddaughter gets killed by one of these trucks hauling explosives in, and it rolls over and it blows the school up, his money and his insurance cannot make me whole again. So they've admitted that there can be an accident. That's straight from their mouth. That's all I got to say.
I have a question back here.
Yeah, I just had a question where if ESI has other facilities and if there's been any kind of study on what they've done to the property values around those facilities, is there data that shows that we shouldn't worry about our 15%?
Okay, the question was, is there other facilities, have they affected property values? I would like to ask Dean tonight if they would be willing to participate in helping us get an economic impact study done, and if possible. And anyway, I'll turn it back over to you right now.
The question about us having other facilities, we do not have other facilities like this. We do have a facility where we manufacture charges that are used in the removal of equipment offshore, old oil rigs. When they're done with the oil rig, the business takes those apart. And we have a facility where we take in and make the charges and store them and follow all the rules and regulations. This company's been in existence 31 years, accident-free. The insurance that we pay, I would fault my partner here because his dad named the company Explosive Service International. So when we go out and get an insurance policy and you got explosive in your name, it's already going to be high. But we pay a lot of insurance because of what we do. And we take extreme caution in it, and it's been proven. Our safety record's impeccable. We're working, and Jason says this best. We operate day in and day out in less than ideal situations. Whether it's on top of a rail car that's burning in a community similar to this, like the one that just came through, these people put on the appropriate safety gear and go and render that situation safe. It's extremely dangerous, some of the stuff we do, but at every turn of it, safety is paramount. We've had 0 instances.
Yeah, but I'm worried about my property value.
Yeah, well,
What I've heard from other places around this country, at other disposal sites, that they're in low-income places.
no.
That's not what I want for mine.
Yeah, this is one thing to make sure you understand. All of Camp Minden, all 14,995 acres is a superfund.
Yeah.
Okay, it's under monitored natural attenuation, so it cannot, come off of that status until the groundwater is cleaned up. It's not going to be in our lifetime that happens. Now, there was somebody, and I don't do Facebook, but somebody showed me something here recently where an individual said about the property values. And when Webster Parish got their landfill on the north.
We're not Webster Parish though, we're Webster
No,
Parish.
I understand. When Webster Parish was siting that landfill, and they said, look, it's going to hurt property values, it's going to hurt property values and all this. Same thing that's being spoken tonight. A valid concern, okay? And I'm not saying it isn't. But the gentleman that answered that said he bought his house there for like 80 grand, he just sold it for 250. And when he saw this, it's by the landfill or whatever, I don't know the geography or exactly where it was. But I'm fine with us helping do an economic study, make sure that we're not impacting y'all's value. Absolutely. The equipment is the best in the world. It's been proven, and we don't want to do anything to impact y'all's value in your homes. And spending some of the money here, but that's not an issue with us. Do an economic study. I think what you will see is increasing the jobs in the community will increase your demand far greater than anything that will come negative out of us.
Well, you're talking 160 jobs. There's a lot more homeowners than 160 jobs.
Yeah, so I guess just, again, back to the facts discussions earlier, right? So, Mr. Madden, I think you said estimated tax revenue $6 to $10 million for the state, the parish, and the cities. If the impact study comes back and it says it's going to go down by $15 million for this area, that's a fact? Are we still going to move forward that we say, well, we can gain 6 to 10 in taxes, but the property value and the owners around here are gonna lose $15 million, then that's a fact that we shouldn't even move forward. So when do we think that impact analysis will be done to allow us to make that decision or have that informed information?
To answer that question, he was asking about when an impact study might be done. In my resolution, I was kind of hoping maybe the state might do that, but I don't know if that's going to happen. If I understood Dean just now, they might help us with that. We'd have to locate a company to do that. Something was said about bond. How much bond do y'all have as a bonding company? Yes, sir.
Right now, we have a $35 million bond.
$35 million bond? Okay. I was told today when Expo went down, they had $2 million worth of insurance.
I don't have any knowledge of what they do. I know we have $35 million bond. I don't think they actually had a bond at all.
They probably did.
They had no bond and they had very limited interest from what I've heard.
Sir, I want you to know from me, I ain't got a problem with y'all's company. I think y'all are a very, very good company. I know Mr. Madden's is. I've just got a big problem with the location. And I'm happy to hear it might be going to Ruston.
I encourage you. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm the one
That's brand new news to me.
as well.
But anyway, I hope we can.
I would like to invite you out to come look at it. I know several people have. I would encourage you to come out to the tour, educate yourself, because I think you've got a lot of.
All these facts and figures, they confuse me, but I know it's probably a good piece of equipment. Again, I'm just uncomfortable with the location. Ms. Frances Kelley would like, she wants to speak. Senator Gaddy told me personally, he said, I think the citizens' awareness groups are important to dialogue in the community. Let them know what to tell the governor. So she wants to speak. I've heard her speak before. I've read articles she's written. She's pretty level-headed, but she wants to say a little bit about the Citizens Awareness Group from CALCAD, and they did do a lot to stop this open burn. And it hadn't been mentioned here tonight, but open burning is totally illegal in Canada. I don't know what they know that we don't know. But anyway, this is Frances Kelley.
Thank you. It's actually illegal in the United States too, but there's a loophole that's still being used to allow it to go on. I actually want to talk a little bit about the dialogue committee. So I was one of the leaders of the Concerned Citizens campaign, which got EPA to agree to a dialogue committee to look at the alternatives to the open burn and be able to move forward with a solution that wasn't the open burn. And on that dialogue committee, before we had any idea what technology the state and EPA would choose to get rid of the M6, all of us on the dialogue committee, which included citizens, scientists, elected officials, representatives from the EPA, the Army, the state of Louisiana, from the local governments, all of us agreed that we did not want Camp Minden to become a permanent hazardous waste disposal site. And we made that decision after having informed ourselves and researched this heavily and learning about the risks, learning about the history, and so that is where that decision came from. And it's nothing about this particular technology. Any technology that would have been brought in to dispose of the M6, the agreement was that it was going to be a temporary technology and then it would leave. And that was our agreement. What's happened since then, as part of the fight to stop open burning in this country and to enforce the laws that are on the books in terms of hazardous waste, our national coalition that we helped start helped pass a law in Congress that's going to have some of our top national scientists look at the alternatives to open burning and implementing those. And so there's growing pressure on the military to stop open burning. We did a bunch of research, looked at the Army audit reports, and there's 557,000 tons of aging munitions that has to be disposed of in the next 10 years. And that report's actually a few years old, so the number is growing. And when the federal government finally stops open burning, if there are not other sites where there are alternatives being deployed, there's going to be enormous pressure for all of those munitions to come here if this facility is still operating. And so we we learned those things throughout the course of this campaign, and that's why all of us in the dialogue committee, there was not a single person on that dialogue committee that spoke out and said, no, we want this to be a permanent site. Everyone said, this is the agreement. That's what all the companies knew, they were bidding on it. I do want to address the faucet agreement. I've read the appendix that is specifically about the land use restrictions on Camp Minden. The term of like use companies, that only applies to specific buildings on Camp Minden, not to the entire site. And in fact, much of the site of Camp Minden is reserved for military training activities, so the entire site couldn't be used for commercial operations anyways, but it only applies to specific buildings. And in that agreement, it specifies that it is superseded by the Superfund law and by the Superfund cleanup that's ongoing. So that's not a permanent restriction, nor is it a restriction that the whole site cannot be used for other kinds of commercial activities. The other thing that we learned in our research is that most hazardous waste incinerators in this country are not in compliance with the environmental regulations. They continue to be out of compliance, and they're not shut down by EPA or by the state governments. And so while this unit isn't in compliance now, it's only ever been tested within 6, and we do not know how it would do with other things, nor can we know that it would be shut down if it was in violation. They can make all of the promises that they want to make. Like you said, it could be a different company at some point operating this. It's a very, it's an industry where there's a lot of demand for people to have these kinds of sites to dispose of this kind of waste. But I think even the one in Alvarado, I can't say this for certain, but that was one of the sites that I looked at in Alvarado, Arkansas, and looked at their compliance history. And I don't know if they were one of the incinerators that was out of compliance or one of the ones that was in compliance, but most of them in the country were out of compliance.
Thanks.
Survey.
We're at about 10 minutes after 9. We've been at it a while. I guess we can go on, or we can, Dr. Flournoy wants to say something. There was a question asked a while ago about, has there been any long-term studies around these burn chambers, and maybe Dr. Flournoy can answer that question right quick.
There haven't been any long-term studies that I'm familiar with as far as in facilities. But one thing I wanted to say was I was a member of the Concerned Citizens same committee that Brian and the others have talked about. I was in agreement initially that this chamber needed to be dismantled, but in reviewing the data in the control rooms and all the things that we've seen, all the data that I've seen online, shows that this system is better than we thought it would be. With 5.9 DRE, destruction removal efficiency, it is top of the line. So that's the reason I changed my mind, because I feel it's good for North Louisiana. And I told the governor of this state in the mansion, in a meeting with Madden, that he can be the champion of the United States of having the best combustion chamber. And that's something you people in North Louisiana and Minden particularly can be proud of. You're number 1 in the United States. We're number 1 in incarceration, number 48 in education, but we're number 1 in combustion technology and the best system.
Good night and good luck, everybody. Thank you for coming.